Vivian knew something was wrong the moment she saw her name missing from the morning's press materials. The official brochure listed all company delegates for the Global AI Summit, CMO, VP of Product, even a newly minted Gen Z Innovation Fellow, whose only credential was a viral TikTok rant about empathy in chatbots. But not Vivian Hale. Not the woman who'd led the product division through 2 acquisitions, a cyber attack, and a pandemic. Not the one who'd practically built the platform they were showcasing today. Her badge still read Chief Strategy Officer, though. No one had told her otherwise, yet. She forced a smile through the plastic mask of conference makeup and adjusted her blazer. The air in the hotel ballroom was dry and over-perfumed, thick with the ambition of 1,000 badge-clad disruptors sipping ethically sourced espresso. Screens pulsed with buzzwords like regenerative machine learning and AI with soul. It was the kind of place where 20-something founders pitched ideas they barely understood to men with hedge fund haircuts who nodded like priests in a confessional. Vivian had once been the queen of these rooms. She knew every Venn diagram before it appeared, could outpitch anyone on 3 hours of sleep and half a bottle of Shiraz. But this year felt different. Colder. No one said it outright, but she could hear it in the way junior execs addressed her, overly polite, vaguely patronizing, like she was a beloved aunt who still thought cloud meant weather. And the irony was, she was the one who first pushed the company to pivot to AI, before ChatGPT, before any of them could even pronounce transformer architecture. She found her seat near the main stage and exhaled. At least she hadn't been relegated to the back like last year's influencers. Name card in place. 3rd row, center. Then she noticed the man sitting beside her. Nathan Lang. As in that Nathan Lang, the reclusive venture oracle, the man who turned 3 college dropouts into unicorn founders before breakfast, the kind of investor who didn't even take meetings anymore. He appeared like a thunderclap, like a rumor made flesh. He was thinner than she remembered, white-haired now, with the kind of presence that made people lower their voices around him instinctively. Vivian swallowed. She hadn't seen him in over a decade, not since the Quantum Core IPO, when they'd been on opposing sides of a brutal acquisition deal. He hadn't aged so much as calcified into something sharper. He glanced at her badge, then at her. A slow nod. Hail. Nathan, she replied, her voice smoother than she felt. They sat in silence as the lights dimmed and the first keynote began. An up-and-coming founder from Lisbon clicked through slides on AI for neuro-emotional mapping, whatever the hell that meant. Vivian wasn't listening. Her phone buzzed twice, once for an alert, once for a message, but she ignored it. Not here, not with Nathan watching. The room applauded politely at the end of the talk. Nathan leaned toward her, voice low. Still running strategy? She hesitated. Yes. A small smile curled at the edge of his mouth. For now. She turned sharply to look at him, but his eyes were already back on the stage. She glanced at her phone. One unread message. From her boss. Her stomach tightened, a heat blooming in her chest that had nothing to do with the stage lights. She didn't open it yet. Not in front of Nathan. Not here. Instead, she slipped the phone into her lap, pretending to scroll through conference notes while her vision tunneled around that single red notification dot. For now, he'd said, like he knew something. Like everyone always seemed to know something before she did lately. Behind her, 2 young execs from her company whispered and laughed. She caught the phrase succession plan and more dynamic branding voice. The hair on her arms prickled. She felt like a relic, a polished, expensive, quietly discarded relic. The speaker on stage mispronounced the word heuristic and got a standing ovation. Vivian applauded too, mechanically, eyes glazed. She didn't know it yet, but the message on her phone would end her career, or so her boss thought. What he didn't account for was who she was sitting next to when she read it, or what that quiet, simmering humiliation would become in the next 24 hours. It happened between panels. One moment, Vivian was nodding politely to a VC in a Patagonia vest who smelled like artisanal beard oil, and the next, her phone lit up with that same cursed red dot. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Something inside her already knew, some twitch in the gut reserved for disasters and betrayals. Still, she tapped. Her boss's name, no greeting, no build-up, just 3 lines, you're done. We're promoting younger talent. HR will handle the transition. That was it. No signature, no call. Just a text like she was being dropped from the company Slack channel, not the woman who'd led strategy through 2 funding rounds, launched 4 product verticals, once held the CEO's hand under a boardroom table when the markets crashed in '09. She read it twice. Then again, "You're done." It was the kind of message that short-circuited language. Her brain started sorting emotions like files on a cluttered desktop: rage, betrayal, nausea, shame. But above all, humiliation. The kind that gets under your skin like a splinter dipped in acid. She could feel it bleeding into her limbs, rising into her throat, clouding her vision. They didn't even wait until after the conference. Didn't even give her the dignity of a phone call. Just a bland corporate execution carried out through SMS like she was a temp being dropped from the rotation. She felt the heat crawl up her neck. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Nathan Lang was still beside her, flipping through a leather-bound notebook, utterly unbothered by the clamor of tech bros buzzing like flies around the free kombucha bar. Vivian didn't think, didn't plan. She just needed someone else to see it, someone real, someone who knew the game. She tilted the phone toward him, holding it out in the space between their chairs like a peace offering made of poison. Nathan glanced sideways, paused. One eyebrow arched with surgical precision. The rest of his face remained still. Vivian braced for a response. A question. A chuckle, something. Nathan just turned the page in his notebook and said nothing. Not even a damn head shake. Silence stretched between them like a cable ready to snap. She pulled the phone back, thumb trembling. Her hand ached from how tightly she'd been gripping it. Vivian turned away, blinking hard. Around her, the world kept spinning. Investors swapping buzzwords, interns chasing coffee, speakers reapplying lipstick before the next panel on conscious capitalism. Everything in her had gone still. She was 53. She'd given that company 18 years, traveled to 6 continents, slept under her desk twice, covered for her CEO's affair with a fintech influencer, spent Christmas Eve on Zoom with Singapore because global doesn't sleep. And now she was done. Younger talent, like she was moldy bread. Like her experience, her war-earned instincts, meant nothing in the face of fresh skin and buzzcut ambition. She stared straight ahead, breath shallow. Something inside her cracked, not loud, not visible. Just a thin fracture running down whatever piece of her had still believed in loyalty, in merit, in being safe if you just worked hard enough and kept your mouth shut. Nathan still said nothing, but he didn't have to. Because in that moment, Vivian wasn't looking for comfort. She was cataloging, processing, calculating. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt awake. Coldly, clinically awake. Hands stopped shaking. Her mouth set into a line that used to terrify junior analysts. Nathan finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "They always think youth is disruption," he murmured, eyes fixed on the stage, "until experience burns down their roadmap." Vivian didn't answer. She didn't need to, because something had shifted, something irreversible, and the message still glowed on her screen like a match waiting to be struck. Vivian didn't remember leaving the auditorium. One minute, she was sitting beside Nathan Lang, the ghost of a text burning holes in her palm. The next, she was pushing through a revolving door of Gucci loafers and jargon, navigating a hallway lined with startup demo booths and social media content corners, until she found a lounge cloaked in low light and lower expectations. It was one of those half-empty networking rooms filled with half-full people, old chairs, stale coffee, tech veterans pretending they hadn't just been out-hustled by someone in Yeezys. She picked a booth in the far corner, back to the wall like it was a saloon, and finally let herself breathe. The text was still on her screen. She'd read it 16 times now, knew every cruel pixel of it. "You're done. No thank you, no nuance. Just a push off a cliff and a cheery wave from the top." She let the phone slide to the table. Done. Funny. That's what they said after the SpinShift deal fell through too. "Maybe you've lost your edge, Vive." That was board member #3, the one who wore pocket squares and once asked her if she got blockchain. Then there was the strategy session in Q1, where the younger VP, a boy she'd mentored through 2 demotions, suggested a more dynamic forward vision, and everyone nodded like sheep on MDMA. She'd brushed it off, laughed at the jokes, played along, pretended it didn't sting when someone called her the institutional memory of the company, like she was a server rack gathering dust in the corner. Now here she was, the memory, deleted. She leaned back against the booth's cracked leather and stared at the ceiling, letting the past crawl in through the vents. Seattle, 2014. She'd fought off a hostile takeover with nothing but a half-baked roadmap and a red-eye flight full of adrenaline. They called her the firewall, joked that she bled quarterly earnings. New York, 2017. She saved the flagship product with a 3-week pivot to machine learning, an idea the CTO had laughed off until she slipped the prototype into his hands. San Francisco, 2019. She stood in front of a room full of men with million-dollar egos and told them their growth projections were bullshit. She was right. The CFO retired 6 months later. And what did it buy her? A text. Vivian stared at her reflection in the dark gloss of her phone. No mascara smudge. No tear-streaked cheeks. Just her own eyes, sharp and exhausted. Then quiet. A strange, deliberate quiet. The kind that followed explosions or preceded them. She pulled out her notebook, real leather. A gift from a retiring COO who once told her, "You don't just build products, Vivian, you build spines." She flipped to a blank page and wrote 2 words. Let's begin. Hand didn't shake. If they wanted younger, flashier, louder, fine, let them have it. Let them crash their clown car of brand ambassadors into a wall of TikTok filters. She was going to remind them what real power looked like. She pulled out her second phone, the one she used for side consulting. No company spyware, no tracking, just her and the ghosts of favors owed. She opened her contacts, started scanning names like weapons in an armory. Some had burned her, some still sent Christmas cards. But a few, just a few, had been waiting for someone exactly like her to finally say, enough. Vivian checked the time. 10:42 a.m. By noon, she'd know who was still loyal. By nightfall, she'd have a plan. They thought she was done, she smiled. They had no idea what done looked like. Not yet. She started with Curtis Chang, ex-engineer, walking genius. Proud hermit now living off-grid in Montana with a solar array and a cat named Kafka. She'd covered for him after the Spectra hack leak back in 2016, took the fall for a database exploit he found and reported too publicly. He never forgot that. When she texted, "Still think ethics matter? I'm building something." Quietly. "I need your brain," he responded within 5 minutes. "How fast can you move?" That was the first domino. Next was Sierra Delgado, former CMO, now on sabbatical after her own fallout with the board. Vivian knew the story better than most. Sierra had refused to spin a false ESG compliance report, and they'd iced her out, whispering not a team player until she got the message. Vivian had slid a resignation package across the table and told her, "Take the win, keep the receipts." Sierra still owed her. Vivian messaged, "Remember when we said we'd build something cleaner, smarter, and human first? I just got kicked off the Titanic. You want to help me build the lifeboat?" "Yes, who else?" Then came Marlon, former product lead, one of the few who still had a spine. He'd quit 3 months ago after objecting to how the company was using anonymized user data to test their beta AI in ways that tiptoed legal cliffs. Moral differences, the company called it. Vivian called it a red flag. She sent him a screenshot of her boss's text. No context, no plea, just the raw image. His reply, "I'm in. Tell me when and where." She looked up from her phone, heartbeat even, the lounge around her unchanged. But something tectonic had shifted. These people weren't just names. They were pieces, loyal, sharp, bruised pieces like her. All underestimated, all ready. She left the lounge, moving through the conference crowd like a ghost with a mission. Kind of woman no one saw coming because they'd already decided she wasn't a threat. She approached the hotel concierge desk with the calm of someone ordering an execution over tea. "I'd like to book a private meeting room." Discreetly. No signage, no directory listing. Just coffee, Wi-Fi, and silence. The young woman blinked, of course. For how long? Indefinitely. By 1:00 p.m., she had room 608. Second floor. Corner suite. No cameras in the hallway. The hotel staff thought she was prepping for product demo. She let them. Inside, she dropped her bag, kicked off her heels, and locked the door. The curtains stayed shut. The silence was sacred. She sat cross-legged on the carpet with her notebook open and a black pen gripped like a scalpel. She flipped back to the product idea, the one she shelved 6 months ago after the board yawned their way through her pitch. An AI advisory platform, but not the fluffy, chatbot-style self-help junk flooding the market. This was different. It was built for high-stakes decision-making, finance, medicine, logistics, designed to audit itself, to refuse manipulation. A machine that knew when it was being used for bullshit and flagged it. She'd called it Eidolon, a nod to Greek mythology. A mirror, a ghost, a second self. The tech was sound. The models were halfway trained. All she needed was the backbone, the team, the code base, the story. Now she had the one thing she'd never had before, absolutely nothing to lose. She started sketching. Product tiers, revenue streams, onboarding funnels, partnerships. She'd pitch it as the anti-AI startup, a rebellion in code, ethics first, transparency baked, anti-bro. By 2:00 p.m., the deck was outlined. By 3 p.m., Sierra and Curtis were already feeding her use case angles and architecture solutions via Telegram. By 3:42 p.m., she bought the domain eidolon.com. She paid extra for privacy shielding. The room smelled like stale hotel linens and revenge. And still, she didn't feel tired. Not yet. They thought they'd buried her. They didn't realize she'd been composting. At 4:17 p.m., a knock. One sharp rap, then silence. Vivian paused mid-keystroke. Only one person had that kind of nerve. Opened the door to Nathan Lang leaning on the frame like he'd never left. Same slate gray blazer. Same unreadable expression carved out of old money and older secrets. In his hand, a double espresso, still steaming. Figured you'd skip town, he said. Vivian stepped aside. Not my style. He entered like he owned the air around him, surveyed the room, papers scattered, diagrams half-sketched on hotel notepads, 4 different chat threads open on her laptop screen. Oh, he said, pulling out a chair. You gonna sulk in here for 2 days or actually do something with that middle finger they texted you? Vivian looked at him deadpan, then reached for her notebook and flipped it to the page titled Eidolon, Core Architecture v1.0. I've got something. 30 seconds. You want it or not? Nathan nodded once. She stood. No theatrics, no buzzwords, just steel. An AI advisory engine that audits itself, designed for high-stakes domains, surgical planning, investment modeling, critical logistics. It logs every inference, explains every recommendation, detects manipulation in real time and flags ethical risk. We call it Eidolon because it reflects what you put in. You want bias, it'll tell you you're full of shit. Nathan blinked once. The corner of his mouth curled, like a man watching his favorite horse come out of retirement and smoke the new blood on lap 1. Come with me, he said. I've got 2 investors at the bar. They've been throwing seed rounds at hot garbage all year. Let's show em what compost looks like. Vivian grabbed her blazer, laptop under arm, no hesitation. Her blood buzzed like a live wire. The conference bar was a velvet cave of overpriced cocktails and quiet power games. Nathan steered her to a back booth where 2 men in $1,000 hoodies were sipping something amber and smug. Nathan introduced her with the subtlety of a knife in the dark. This is Vivian Hale. She's about to make someone very rich. She pitched Eidolon again. Cleaner, meaner. By the end, one of the men, a heavy-lidded type with VC annui and a notepad full of deal flow regrets, asked, "How soon can you demo?" Vivian smiled. "How soon can you wire 6 figures?" They laughed. She didn't, and that landed harder than a whole TED talk. Drinks were poured, cards exchanged. Eyes opened, then motion over Nathan's shoulder. Vivian stiffened. Across the bar, striding in like a couple walking into their own coronation, were him and her. Her boss, Matthew Harrow, still tan from his last Maldives retreat, and beside him, Kristen Cho, her replacement, a 31-year-old brand futurist whose only published paper was a Medium post titled Why Old Leadership Fails Fast. They didn't see her. Not yet. Vivian ducked slightly, just enough to be out of their eye line. Nathan noticed. "Friends of yours?" She didn't answer. But she listened. They were loud. Too loud for a bar where deals lived or died on silence. "I'm telling you," Harrow was saying, "if we spin it right, that self-auditing AI concept she shelved last year, it's fresh again. The press'll eat it up with the ethics angle." Vivian's stomach flipped. Kristen laughed, sharp and shallow. "You mean the thing she pitched that no one cared about?" "Exactly," Harrow said. "Clean it up, repackage it with younger energy, and drop the Eidolon name. Something punchier. Maybe Lumina feels more Gen Z." Vivian's jaw clenched so hard her molars ached. Nathan's gaze darkened. He didn't need to ask. He'd heard enough. Vivian picked up her glass not to drink but to steady her hand. Her voice was even. They're trying to pitch it as theirs. Nathan stirred his drink slowly, like a man watching a house catch fire from a safe distance. "Well then," he murmured, "I'd say we just got a deadline." Vivian leaned forward, eyes cold. "They want war?" Nathan met her stare. "No," he said. "They want applause. You'll give them fire instead." By midnight, the adrenaline thinned. The messages slowed. The calls stopped getting picked up. Vivian sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, laptop glow washing her in cold light, a spreadsheet open with names, timelines, product tiers. Sierra was building early branding concepts. Curtis was knee-deep in back-end architecture. Marlon had already shared 3 old beta modules they could rework. Everything looked possible, until it didn't. A ping lit up the screen. Message from Marlon. "Vive, I've been thinking. I might have to step back. This thing's gonna get real political and I've got stock options I can't mess with. If this blows up, I'm screwed." She stared at the words like they were written in ash, not angry, just gutted. Marlon, guy who stood up in front of the ethics board and told them their data manipulation was unethical. The one who called her unshakable. Now he was shaking. She tried calling, straight to voicemail. Then she tried Susan Weller, her old peer, SVP of infrastructure. A woman who once told her, if you ever build your own ship, I'm jumping off mine to row it. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Then a text. Can't get involved, Vive. You understand. I hope you win. Vivian didn't remember standing. One moment she was reading the screen, the next she was pacing barefoot on industrial carpet, hands clenched, pulse in her throat. This was it, wasn't it? The wall. The moment in the story where the world quietly suggests you were never the hero. Just a placeholder for someone younger, faster, louder. What the hell was she doing? She was 53. Her knees popped when she stood too fast. She used to laugh about that. Now it felt like prophecy. What if Marlon was right? What if this did blow up? What if she torched her own legacy for a vanity project nobody wanted? She dropped onto the bed like the air had left the room. 53, female, fired, and trying to outmaneuver a system that had already decided her expiration date. A knock, soft, precise. She didn't answer. Nathan opened the door anyway. He stepped inside, looked around the war zone of notes and empty coffee cups. Said nothing. Vivian didn't look at him. Just stared at her open laptop, cursor blinking on a half-finished pitch deck. They're backing out, she said, voice flat. I figured, Nathan replied. She rubbed her face with both hands. Maybe I am too old for this. Nathan scoffed, crossed the room, and closed her laptop like he was sealing a coffin. You're not too old. You're just used to needing someone's permission. She looked up, eyes narrowed. I don't need a pep talk. Good, he said. Don't give them. He sat on the chair across from her, elbows on his knees. You keep trying to prove you're still relevant. Like relevance is some trophy you win by getting retweeted. Stop it. You don't need to prove anything. You already are the thing. Vivian swallowed. Something sharp and silent passed between them. Nathan leaned back. You asked me once why I walked away from my own fund. It's because I got tired of feeding the machine. I wanted to burn it, but I needed someone to light the match. He stood, headed for the door. Don't build this to get back at them. Build it because you believe in it, or don't bother. Then he was gone. The silence afterward was louder than the knock. Vivian stared at her screen, then reopened the laptop. The cursor blinked again, waiting. She opened a browser, typed slowly Eidolon.com. It was hers already. Then, Eidolon Platform.com, still available. She bought it, and 5 variations. She opened a new slide deck. Blank title page. No logo yet, no polish, just raw space. Slide 1, Eidolon, self-auditing AI for critical human decisions. She typed until dawn. By morning, the deck was 47 slides deep, full of pain and power, and everything the old company told her was too complex for their audience. She didn't want their audience. She wanted the future. The room felt colder now. Not from the thermostat, from something deeper, like the walls themselves were remembering. Remembering every late night she spent grinding numbers no one ever saw. Remembering how many times she'd bent instead of broken. How many times she'd let some boy genius talk over her in meetings because it was better optics. How many next quarters she'd waited through, like a woman handcuffed to a calendar. Vivian stood by the window, staring out at the pre-dawn glow leaking across the skyline. Conference banners still flapped in the distance. Glossy posters with fake smile founders and phrases like the future, faster. It all looked like a movie set now, like a plastic altar built to worship youth and buzzwords. Behind her, the laptop hummed. The deck was nearly done. 61 slides, every pixel sharpened like a blade, but something still itched under her skin. She sat back down, notepad open beside her, and started flipping pages, not forward, but backward, back through all the ideas that never saw daylight. The ones they called not ready, not market-friendly, too risky. Q3 ethics layer proposal shelved. Early detection bias flags labeled too niche. Cross-sector AI governance model straight up mocked. And each time she'd nodded, smiled, let it go. Because she was leadership. Because she was told to pick her battles. But the truth? She'd been bleeding out in inches. Death by 1,000 concessions. Every time she stayed silent to protect morale. Every time she let a VP slap his name on her draft. Every dinner missed. Every daughter's voicemail replied to at midnight. Vivian tapped her pen once, twice, then flipped to the last page in the notebook and wrote in all caps, "This is the last time I wait my turn." She circled it. Hard, that's when the name came. Not Eidolon, not Lumina, not something fragile or trendy. She typed it into the deck, Obsidian, because it was sharp, formed under pressure. And once broken, it cut clean, ObsidianAI. She stared at it until the word imprinted itself behind her eyes. A platform designed to remember, to expose, to refuse silence. She uploaded the deck to a private folder, drafted a press release teaser, bought the AI domain variation. The clock read 4:51 a.m. She turned off the lights, lay down on the stiff hotel mattress, and closed her eyes. 2 hours of sleep, just enough to dream of fire. The knock came at 7:01, 3 sharp raps, familiar rhythm. Vivian sat up, bone stiff, heart steady. She didn't smooth her hair, didn't reach for lipstick. She opened the door. Nathan stood there. No blazer this time, just black shirt, black coffee in hand, and that same granite stillness. He looked her in the eye, no smile. "You ready?" he asked. Vivian nodded. "I've never been more dangerous." The investor breakfast was invitation only, meaning half the people in the room were there on favors, and the other half were there to spy. A velvet-roped buffet of $30 scrambled eggs, tech billionaires in all birds, and old-school money pretending not to be alarmed by the word disruption. Vivian walked in like she still had a C-suite badge clipped to her chest. No hesitation. No apology. Just a steel blue dress, one printed deck folder in her hand. A look that said, "I know exactly what this room costs per minute." Nathan was already there, talking to 2 VCs she recognized from the Luminar exit, the kind of men who measured ROI in body language and had better recall for equity splits than their kids' birthdays. When he saw her, he gave her the slightest nod. Vivian didn't join him, not yet. She had work to do. She made a slow orbit around the room, each stop calculated. First, she found Lydia Tran, senior reporter for Tech Ledger Weekly, the same woman who once roasted a startup so hard it cratered their valuation before IPO. Vivian handed her a flash drive like it was nothing more than a business card. "Something sharp for your inbox," she said. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Under embargo, Vivian smiled. Not for long. Then came Asher Price, old rival who'd built an AI wearable that turned out to be 90% vapor and 10% hype. He still had clout, though, and he hated Harrow's company more than gluten. Vivian passed him a second flash drive. "Thought you'd appreciate a real product for once," she said. She made 3 more drops like that, quiet, precise, controlled. By the time she looped back toward Nathan, the air in the room had shifted. Heads started to turn. Phones began to glow. What was happening? The whispers first. "Did you hear Vivian Hale's building something? Obsidian, what is that?" Lang's backing her. Then the glances, CEOs eyeing each other over half-eaten brioche, VCs texting under the table, assistants getting pulled aside. Vivian didn't need confirmation. She felt the change ripple through the room like static before a storm. Her phone buzzed in her palm. Matthew Harrow. She let it ring once before reading the message. "What are you doing?" Not "Hi, Vivian." Not "Let's talk." Not "This seems like a misunderstanding." Just "What are you doing?" She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she turned toward the main conference stage where Nathan had already begun walking up the side stairs. She followed him, heels hitting the steps like war drums. They stood side by side under the hot lights. From here, the investor breakfast looked like a panicked stock exchange. Heads spinning. Hands typing. 1,000 egos suddenly reminded that power didn't come with youth, but with timing. Vivian lifted her phone, snapped a selfie, no filter, no branding. Just her and Nathan Lang, shoulder to shoulder, both wearing expressions that said, "You had your chance. Now we take ours." She attached the photo, replied to Harrow's message, "Building what you threw away," then hit send. The read receipt came instantly. So did the silence. A silence so loud, it swallowed every excuse he'd been rehearsing since yesterday. Vivian lowered the phone and smiled. War had gone public. The keynote hall was standing room only, latecomers pressed against the back wall, clutching tote bags and cold lattes, murmuring guesses about what Nathan Lang was going to unveil. Rumors had boiled overnight. He hadn't teased a product or a partnership or a single damn hint, just a single quote tweeted 12 hours earlier. "Some things are forged in silence. Others are forged in betrayal." Now the lights dimmed. The room hushed like a held breath. Nathan walked out alone, no flashy intro, no brand sizzle reel, just him, and the weight of everyone knowing he didn't speak unless it mattered. He approached the podium. Paused. "I've seen a lot of innovation over the years," he began. "I've backed kids with billion-dollar ideas written on napkins. I've watched some of them soar and some burn out on ego and speed." A pause. "But the one thing I've seen kill more companies than bad code is arrogance. The arrogance of believing you can discard experience. Silence loyalty. Replace wisdom with charisma. A few heads in the crowd shifted. Phones raised. Fingers hovered over Twitter. Nathan continued. This morning, I invested in a startup, a new company. It doesn't have a press kit yet, doesn't have a TikTok campaign or a mascot. What it does have is a mission: to build AI that serves humans instead of manipulating them. Auditable, transparent, principled. Now the crowd stirred, whispered. But most importantly, Nathan said, his voice sharpening, this company is led by someone who's been building integrity into systems long before it was profitable. A woman whose work was dismissed because it didn't fit a younger vision. Woman this industry tried to erase. And then he turned, gestured. Vivian stepped onto the stage, no theatrics, no strut, just presence. She wore black, her hair pinned up, her gaze steady. People didn't clap at first, they gasped. Then the flood, applause like a storm, cameras flashing like gunfire, reporters breaking rank to elbow toward the stage. Nathan didn't need to say her name, everyone knew. He stepped back. Vivian took the mic but didn't speak, not right away. She looked out over the sea of faces, past the investors and journalists and interns, and found him. Matthew Harrow, third row, no longer tan. His mouth hung slightly open, color gone from his face like someone had drained the profit margins out of him. Next to him, Kristen Cho, her replacement, her future, the young talent. She looked like she'd been aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Vivian said one thing, we named it Obsidian, because it cuts. That was all. The room exploded. Reporters shoved forward. Microphones launched. Flashes strobed. Someone was already tweeting Langback's ObsidianAI led by ex-CSO Vivian Hale, massive shakeup incoming. But Vivian didn't stay. She stepped off stage while the noise swelled behind her like a collapsing empire. Walked down the side stairs, past the handlers and sponsors, and stunned interns in branded hoodies. She pulled out her phone, opened the draft she typed last night at 3:42 a.m., half delirious with rage and caffeine. 2. HR at Harrow Tech Corpcom subject. Transition, you'll need a new transition plan. Mine's full. She hit send, tucked the phone in her blazer pocket, and walked out of the keynote hall without looking back. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.